Alright guys, so as you can see, we've got the gun apart on the bench here. I went ahead and put the pistol grip on because the first thing we're going to do is get the motor in and the bevel gear, and we're going to set the motor height in the pistol grip. So we're going to start with that. One of the things I noticed when watching videos and or tutorials on how to set motor height and get the gears shimmed properly is there's a lot of putting together and taking apart of the gearbox and handle. So there will be a lot of taking apart of the gearbox and handle on this project. I hope we all have fun watching that happen. Okay, so now there's the motor and the bevel gear, and they actually look pretty good. I mean, I'm going to say that that motor height is fairly decent. So now we're going to check the bevel height on in the actual gearbox. So to do that, I have to take that apart again, put the top on the gearbox, put the pistol grip back on, and we're going to check the sway, which I have a feeling is going to not be any at all on our vertical. So we might just have to shim the top a little bit. So we'll do that next. Alright, so we got our small flathead screwdriver. Just going to check the rotation on that guy. It's rotating really nicely. We do have some vertical play. So let's go ahead and put the pistol grip back on and check our motor alignment. Got the pistol grip back in, motor in. So we're going to check to see how much sway we have in our teeth right here. And we have no sway whatsoever. That motor is right up on there. That is perfectly seated, I think. Because you want just, I don't think you can see it in the video, but down in there, I'm watching this move and seeing when it engages the motor, and it is instantaneously. So that means that motor is right in the groove. Alright, so what's our vertical play here? We have a little bit of vertical play. So we're going to add one shim to the top up here, make sure that we are seated to our bearing perfectly on the top. There we go. Now we're not getting into our vertical play. We are spinning nice and free. Okay, so now that we've got that properly shimmed, we are going to move on to the spur gear and get that guy going. So this one had a it had a shim on it already out from the factory that I just dropped. There it is. So we will see if we need to add more to get it perfect, or if they got it pretty well shimmed from the beginning. What we're looking for here is to kind of get an idea of where our teeth are going to fit. As you can see, with that sitting exactly flat, there is no clearance between the main body of the gear itself and the gear below it. So we know we're going to need at least the one shim. So we will put that back on there. So that shim on there, that brings us up just slightly to where I think we're going to be good. And just because I know I did it on the other gear, I'm going to go ahead and add a shim to this gear just to start with and see what our fit and fiddle is. The reason why you want to screw this back together is, even though I'm pushing it together with my fingers, I'm not truly getting all of the sides set the way having the screws in place would. So there's no way to really be able to tell if you've gotten everything exactly lined up the way it needs to be until you put it back together. And you want to go one gear at a time, obviously, to make sure that all of them are getting equally spaced as you go through the whole gearbox. All right. See how she's moving. Uh-oh. We're pretty tight in there, aren't we? We are indeed. So what that tells me is so I don't know if you can see it or not, but we're going to look at this motion right here to see I think we've got too many shims. Seems to be spinning beautifully in there until a certain point. What I'm trying to determine now is what I am hanging on. If I'm actually hanging on something. Right here hitting something. What am I hitting? Ooh, look at that. You guys see that? Right there. Something. Grease, metal, something fouling the gear right in that spot. This guy won't get hung up. Time to do a bit of cleaning. Gently. Ah, found it. Should be a little bit of debris, probably from when it ate itself alive. We'll obviously get these gears nice and clean before we put them back in, just to make sure it's seated properly. I'm going to do a little cleaning right now. And I know I'm using a pointed scraper, but I'm doing it very gently. Alright, so we have it back together. Let's see how our gears are moving. Like clockwork. Nothing's bound up. Okay, so we got it all back together. Let's see how she runs. So what we're listening for is to see if there's any sort of grinding noises or anything like that. That is a little bit of noise inside this bearing here. A little bit of slop there, but I think that might be as good as we're going to get it. Ladies and gents, boys and girls. Gears are done and shimmed. Now, the fun part. we have here our lovely Aster gate Mosfet, which I'm very excited about. We're going to figure out how to get it installed. Manual. Looks like we're going to be using the M2 set, not the M2.5. We will see here in just a second. Once I get it to all come out of the bag. Come here. Need my insulator screw. There we go. Got it. Alright guys, so I went ahead and put the gears back in. Unfortunately my camera wasn't filming when I was getting everything put together on the cylinder head and the piston, but here's the new piston head. The cylinder head is in the cylinder. I got them properly aligned in here so that the cylinder and the cylinder head are seated properly. So now what we want to do is we want to go in here and figure out what our angle of engagement is going to be. So what that is if I put this piston all the way in, as if it had just been fired, it is done. Oops, hang on. It is now in its seat on the rails. It's gone through the entire cycle. So when this turns with the motor, right there is where the first gear engages the piston. Okay. So that is at about 1 o'clock. And watch what happens to the piston as I move that. See how it moves up and back? We want to try to take away some of that stress so that it engages directly right at the 12 o'clock position. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide my piston back just a little bit until I get what in the engine world in vehicles would be top dead center. Alright, so right here I am at top dead center. So that's where the teeth are going to engage the cylinder, and instead of pulling up and back, pull directly back. So as you can see from this, there needs to be a little bit of tooth ground off that cylinder, or excuse me, that piston tooth right there. Otherwise, we're going to catch before. See how it's hitting it? We want to pull a little bit of that off so that that's gone, so that this does not engage at all until bam, right there. And then that pulls the piston all the way back. Alright, so now that we got that in there, we can see that we need to add some servo pads to the front. So we're going to measure this, measure it fully in, and then determine what our distance is that we need to do to get the front set to allow for us to adjust the angle of engagement. So we will get to that here in just a little bit. But meanwhile, it is time to get our nozzle installed. So we're going to do a little bit of piston grease in here, just to get it some lubrication. Alright guys, so we got the hop-up unit apart, and one of the things that I found out was that we needed to get a hop-up tensioner specifically for the Maple Leaf hop-up. What we had before was the 85-degree Maple Leaf hop-up. I did a little bit more research and I've decided to step it back to the 70-degree. I think that the 80 is a little bit much for an LMG. So we're going to be using the 70-degree instead. So what we're going to do right now is get the Max hop-up unit back together with the Maple Leaf hop-up tensioner in it. So we have all of our pieces here with this tiny little spring that fits down in here. We're going to have to figure out how to get that to stay in there. I think I might just put just a tiny little bit of grease in it, put the spring in, set that back down in there where it needs to go. So let's get this guy open and get ready to get him installed. Alright, so that's our fully assembled hop-up unit with the Maple Leaf 70-degree bucking, the Maple Leaf bucking tensioner, and everything is in place, everything is set, we are good to go, and as you can see, the arm is moving down as it should, adjusting that Maple Leaf hop-up. So that is good to go. Alright guys, as you can see here, we've added a couple of things. I did not like the way the cylinder head and the piston fit inside the stock brass cylinder. So we went ahead and we got ourselves a Max 450 to 550 millimeter cylinder. And I just realized that I have my cylinder head in here upside down. Doesn't really matter, but it's going to annoy me knowing that I did that. So we now have this Max 450 to 550 millimeter, which this barrel fits within that range. And since we are pushing heavier, that's going to allow us to push a little bit heavier BBs. This Max cylinder head has a much better seal on this. I'm liking this a lot better. And so what we've done is we've gone ahead and put that into place. We're going to adjust it a little bit to make sure it fits exactly as it should. So I think it needs to come out just a tidbit. There we go. Basically, it's perfect because you can see where it's supposed to fit. There's a little bit of a groove, or not a groove, but like a that last little bit of red right there that is larger than the main part. That needs to fit flush, is what I'm figuring out. So this is a very well machined stainless steel piston cylinder, excuse me, and the cylinder head is made perfectly for it. Yeah, that's in there nice and tight. Now let's talk about nozzles. So this is the 21.25 millimeter nozzle that I got for this gun, and the cylinder, or the piston head, the cylinder head is very well machined to fit, and you have two O-rings in here. One of the things I recommend doing, guys, is I've seen a lot of complaints that these don't fit on these. And I'm here to let you know that they actually do. This guy fits on here just fine, and it has a nice seal. The mistake that I made the first time is those O-rings in there are not pushed in very tight. So what happened with the first set of O-rings, when I tried to put it on the cylinder head, it nicked it, cut it, and it failed. It would no longer work. So I held on to this nozzle because I might be able to find a replacement O-ring to go in there and clean it out and redo it. But I have a recommendation for anyone that is putting a max nozzle on a max cylinder head, and that is, before you put it on, take something, I took my little brush, I went in here and I just ran it around the O-rings inside to just kind of seat them up in there a little bit more. Then I added a little bit of cylinder grease and then just very gently started twisting it onto the cylinder head, and voila, it was on there, didn't nick the O-rings. That thing is on there, sealed and ready to go. Highly recommend you do that before you start putting the nozzle onto the cylinder head. Alright, so we got a couple of neoprene pads here and a couple of washers. We're going to play with them and see which ones actually do what we want them to do position-wise. As you can see right there, our spacing is pretty spot on for our angle of engagement. So now what we need to do is file down a little bit of this tooth right here, because you're going to catch just on the edge of it. So we're going to file down just a little bit of that so that that tooth is not in the way. Alright, as you can see, we have ground off a little bit of this tooth right here. So we are going to test to see if our angle of engagement is correct, and it is. Now that tooth does not grab at all, and then it hits right where we want it to hit at 12 o'clock on that back tooth, and then everything else fits in where it's supposed to. That's going to work all the way through the gears. Now the next thing we're going to be doing is modifying the tappet plate so that it properly, so it releases at the proper time. So that's our next test. That tappet plate is not, or that tappet is not going to work. So Alright, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we have adapted our 11.1 LiPo to Dean's, and we have our iPro on. And we got a negative. Alright, as you guys can see, we've got everything back together. The charging handle works to get into the hop-up unit. You can see the hop-up unit down in there. Everything seems to be fitting okay. So now, all we need to do is test it.